Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm going to talk today about the Park Chung Hee era in Korea. And the Park Chung Hee era, Park Chung Hee was president for actually a long time, from 1961 to 1979, and he actually kind of ruled both as a democratically elected president and as a dictator. In 1963, now this was due to U.S. pressure, he legally won the Democratic presidential election. He had already been ruling for 2 years. He was involved in a military coup because the governments of South Korea before him, now while they weren't as bad as North Korea, not as bad at all, they were still incompetent and corrupt and dictatorial. They weren't as dictatorial as the North Korean government was by far. And, okay, well, Park Chung Hee took power in 1961 in a military coup when he was a general. And in 1963, due to pressure from President John F. Kennedy in the United States, he legally won the Democratic presidential election in 1963. Now, he had less than 1% of the vote. I will say that. He won by less than 1% of the vote. Let me rephrase that. He won by less than 1% of the vote, but he still legally won it. All right. Well, but Park Chung Hee economically developed Korea, and even his critics on human rights talk about how well he developed the country economically. Even nowadays, he still has, for economic approval ratings, 93.3%, okay? When he came to office, Korea was a fourth world country, okay? But what he did was, okay, first of all, he's from the Gyeongsangnam-do province, and what he did was he built a lot of steel mills, ordered the buildings of a lot of steel mills in Pohang, and where South Korea was able to rapidly industrialize. He also ordered the Korean companies to not be corrupt. If you were corrupt under the Park Chung Hee regime, if you were a corrupt CEO or a corrupt businessman, you would be paraded on the streets and with a sign that said you were corrupt in front of the entire public in a big city like Seoul or Busan. He didn't play with that. Well, what he also did was he had a country development economic policy called Sae-Maul. And Sae-Maul was where he used government funds to clear the debts of a lot of farmers and fishermen. But he also developed roads in the countryside where the Korean countryside had paved roads for the first time. And he also built a lot of new houses in the countryside where the homes in the countryside weren't easily burned down by fires or easily torn down by bad weather, and that was a huge accomplishment. And even like when I was in Jeonju, South Korea, you'd see all kind of flags that said the word Sae-Maul. That is honoring his economic policy of the development of the countryside, because while Jeonju is not a country town, there are several country areas surrounding it that grow a lot of rice, and they still honor Park Chung Hee's accomplishment of Sae-Maul, which was really brilliant. And it did happen. Also, right when he took power, he sent about 8,000 miners to West Germany and 10,000 nurses. And the West German government paid them. I mean, less than the German citizens, but it wasn't slave labor, because the money that the nurses and the miners made, they were able to send their money home, and that helped develop Korea's economy. So while they were paid less than West Germans, they were not paid slave wages. So that worked out. And then in 1965, he did amend relations with Japan, but South Korea got about $740 million in economic aid. And also, Japan would let South Koreans come, because Japan's economy had been developing rapidly since about 1952. No, even before that, like about 1950 onward, Japan's economy had been developing rapidly. So what Japan did is they let South Koreans go to Japan and see what their industry was doing. And South Korea got a lot of ideas from them. I mean, that happened. I mean, like it or not, it happened. And some people say Japan was sincere in it. Some people say the only reason Japan did that is to show that they didn't have to apologize to Korea for the 35 years of brutal occupation. Now, those are differing opinions, but when I was in Korea, all Koreans confirmed that Japan did do that. Whether it was out of the goodness of their heart, that's questionable from what they were saying. But they were proud Japan did help them in that area. Okay, all right. And then also, okay, Park Chung Hee was one of the few leaders that backed the U.S. in the Vietnam War. And really, if you say it was right or wrong, the soldiers went and they were paid by the American government. And because they were paid by the American government, they were able to send their money back to South Korea. A lot of them because they, the barracks were there, provided by. The barracks were provided, the food was provided. They didn't really need the money that much, so they sent a lot of their money back home to their families. And that helped strengthen South Korea's economy as well. Also, Park Chung Hee ordered the construction of major highways in South Korea. Actually, South Korea's first major highway, he ordered the construction of it. He borrowed a lot of his construction ideas from the U.S. Army and wanted to learn as much as he could from the U.S. Army and the U.S. about road construction, and it paid off. So there were questions about his style of rule. 1971, he cheated in the election. He basically bribed peasants to vote for him, and that's how he defeated Kim Dae-jung in the 1971 presidential election. But Park Chung Hee also said he wanted to make South Korea a completely democratic country. He said he wanted to do that, and also, like, when he ruled, he lived very modestly. He did not live in that big of a house. He usually ate rice for most of his meals. He did not live a lavish or luxurious lifestyle by any means when he was developing South Korea's economy. That was just not the case. Now, he had a CIA advisor named Lee Hoo-rock, which he didn't kill too many people, but he burned people's feet. I mean, he tortured people unnecessarily a lot of times, and Park Chung Hee did not kill that many political opponents, but he killed some. I mean, he did. He killed some, and the Japanese Yakuza tried to assassinate Kim Dae-jung, and there is evidence that Park Chung Hee borderline ordered it. So this is just an assessment of Park Chung Hee, but I just really think that had Park Chung Hee not been in power, I'm not sure if Korea would have developed as quickly as it did. I really don't think it would have, because Park Chung Hee was an economic genius. And actually, the Park Chung Hee Memorial or Museum that's in Seoul today, the president or the chairman of that museum has a PhD in economics. And Park Chung Hee knew how to use a system which you call state-run capitalism to order the companies to build heavy industries, to invest in high-tech stuff and exports, and it paid off. And then, sending the soldiers to Vietnam but being paid by the U.S. government, and the soldiers were able to send the American currency home to South Korea, which further helped develop their economy. I mean, those were economic genius situations, and then particularly Mao developing the Korean countryside like it did. And I've been into the Korean countryside many, many times, and I can say that Mao worked. It paid off. Anyways, everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless, and bye-bye. Bye-bye.